today's guest is Joe Ure, who is currently the opposition analyst at Aston Villa. His career highlights include winning promotion to the Premier League with Aston Villa this time last year, which I can't wait to hear about in a minute. He's worked at Tottenham Hotspur at the start of the season when they reached the Champions League final, with obviously the likes of Pochettino and some other really big, well-known names. And whilst he was younger, closer to your age, he's also done an internship at Newcastle United. So a really impressive career, Joe. So we're looking forward to chatting to you this morning. So thanks a lot for coming online.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to start off, Joe, with like a really, really simple question. I just want you to tell us, what is a performance analyst?
So it sort of covers every aspect of a football team that you can imagine, to be fair. So our sort of day-to-day and week-to-week jobs, the main thing for us is opposition analysis, because it's all about the game, really. So we'll spend a few days watching the last 6 games of every opponent. We'll tag things. So each manager wants different things that they look for from opponents. So at the minute under Dean Smith, he'll look at how he breaks his opposition into 3 zones of the pitch. So he'll look at how they build up from the goalkeeper, how they play through midfield, and then how they break through in the final third. And then if you flip that, basically how we can press them, how we can sit in a mid block, and then what we have to do to defend our box. And then you look at the transitions, attacking transitions and defensive transitions upon losing and winning back the ball. So we will watch the last 6 games, pull out key themes around those areas, put together a big opposition preview along with a statistical report, and we'll show both of them to the management staff 2 days, 3 days before a game, depending on if we've got 1 or 2 games a week. They'll sit through it all, pick out key things that they want. They'll obviously watch a couple of games themselves. We'll agree on what we want to show the players, and then we'll go away as analysts. And a bit like the Monday Night Football, where you see Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher use the tools, we'll paint the clips with them, put animations on, and then the day before the game and the morning of a match day, we'll show the players the clips that sorry, that's just the dog. We'll show the players the clips that we've pulled out. And then along with that, we also do things on our own team. So we'll analyse training each day, and we'll do a lot of like statistical reports on ourselves and how we fit sort of along the Premier League. It also links with the sports science department, so we'll do a lot of things with players' GPS, both from match days and from training. And then we have a link to the recruitment department as well. So some of the recruitment guys might come in, show us profiles of players that they want to bring into the club, and then how they would fit along with our players that we've currently got.
Really interesting, that, Joe. And you mentioned there obviously about you as an analyst. So I'm guessing you work as part of a broader team. So paint a picture for us then in terms of how many analysts would be employed at Aston Villa. Sorry, Joe, you're just on mute.
Yeah, there we go. Just muted that. So we have 3 at the first team at Aston Villa, and at Tottenham previously we had 5 for the first team. So each club sort of varies depending on their spending ability, really. But so you don't just have first team analysts, you'll have ones for the under 23/reserve team, the under 18s, the under 16s, and then the academy, so anything from 6s up to 15s. And the academy is where a lot of opportunities come for interns to come in and sort of learn the trade and then get to shadow some first team analysts as well.
Brilliant. And that's something I'd be really keen to pick up on later on, because one of the things we talk about at LLS obviously is where sports qualifications can lead to in terms of careers in the future. So I'd definitely be keen to pick up on that shortly. But just before I do that, I'd just like to share a little image on the screen. And And I just want you to talk us through this, please. So let's have a little look if I can share this image for you now. Has that popped up there, Joe?
Yeah, it has now, yeah.
All right, brilliant. So obviously
so
that one is that stadium. 12, was that 12 months ago, am I right in saying, Joe?
Yeah, 12 months ago, next week probably, yeah. Yeah, that was the playoff final against Derby County. Yeah, great occasion, and that's the sort of, those are the days that you get into the sport for, really. For us, for anyone that doesn't know, yeah, we went on a 10-game winning streak in the championship between March and May, and then in the playoffs we faced local rivals West Brom, home and away, and it went to a penalty shootout at Hawthorns, and then we had to face Derby County in the final, which a lot of people had seen as the John Terry Frank Lampard game as well. So behind the scenes, it was one that both sets of coaching teams wanted to win as well. And the build up for those games, I've been lucky enough in my career so far to have we spent a full season at Wembley with Tottenham Hotspur, and then I've done a couple of FA Cup semi-finals with Tottenham, and then the playoff final there. And yeah, there's nothing better than a cup final day where the stadium split 50-50 and you get 90,000 fans there.
Talk us through then, obviously, there must have been behind the scenes, like you've just touched on, there's a big rivalry between, obviously, John Terry, Frank Lampard, old teammates, both are going into that final, understandably. It means everything to them at that moment in time. But as an analyst, what does your job look like in the days leading up to that final? And was there anything specific that you and your team of analysts did which had a big impact on winning that game?
Yeah, so leading up to the game is pretty similar to any other match day, which is how you'd want it to be. You don't want to sort of do anything too special or take anything away from what the lads have already done leading up to it. We were currently on, like I say, a long unbeaten stretch. So leading up to the game, we done, as we usually do, we done an opposition dossier and we done our pre-match videos. The things that we done differently were we looked at Derby County's playoff record in finals. We also looked at their penalty record in major competitions. And then leading up to the day before, we travelled to Wembley and we stayed overnight at that hotel right on the front, the Hilton. And the night before is a lot of meetings. So we went into team meetings where we showed out the game plan, but then we went specifically into smaller units and into set piece meetings. And then the day of the game, we had a big motivational video. So as we left the hotel, the Hilton is literally, if you go there on a non-match day, you're probably a 20-second walk away from Wembley's main entrance. But on cup final day, because of all the fans around and things, you have to drive it. So you end up driving for about 15 to 20 minutes because you have to go all the way around Wembley to get into the underground. And we put on a big motivational video, showed the pathway through the season, made sure that every player was sort of in the video. And at the same time, you had 50,000 Villa fans who'd waited beside the coach. So you had them setting off flares and flags and music and things just as you were going into Wembley. Yeah, so it's sort of one of them moments that you won't really ever forget.
Was there anything when you were doing your analyst, your day job, if you like, in those few days, was there anything in particular that you and your colleagues have picked up and thought, there's a weak point there, we can use that to our advantage in this final?
Yeah, so for us against Derby County, we knew that we'd have a lot more of the ball against them. We looked at the way that they just played against Leeds. We knew that they were dangerous on the counter. But we also knew that we'd get joy in the wide areas. And we've seen both of our goals in that cup final came from crosses into the box. But that was also a big part of the way we played anyway. So, and previously in that season, we'd beaten Derby twice. So it was just a case of really reinforcing what we'd already done against them, using the previous match plans. And thankfully, it worked on that day.
Brilliant. So you spoke about before earlier on how Dean Smith likes you to sort of analyse and approach a game. Well, let's go back. If we talk about, I'll put another little image on the screen here. Obviously, before you started working with Villa, you were with Spurs, and obviously, you know, one of the most highly regarded young managers in the country is obviously Pochettino. So just talk us through how like Pochettino might have expected you to approach a game, which differs to how Dean Smith does it.
Yeah, so they're very similar in terms of the way that they would expect it in terms of pre-match dossiers, pre-match videos, that sort of standard. But where it becomes different is maybe the terminology that each set of coaches use, and also the detail that they may want to go into on different things. At Tottenham, it was a lot more about what we can do. So at Tottenham, 80% of the games we'd play in a season, we knew we were sort of going to win those games, but it was more a case of how do we break down the opposition as opposed to how do we stop the opposition. And Pochettino was massive. The biggest thing for him was training. So he used to do, it's very much out in the media about how he does double training days and tough training regimes. But that's sort of the way that he wanted to do things, and it's clearly worked. A lot of his sessions were tactical, and in the second year I was there, we brought in drones as well to film training. So 2 days before a game, it was, your day job wasn't so much about sitting in front of the computer and doing opposition things. It was about being on the training field, and we'd have somebody filming the goalkeeper session. We'd have a wide angle on the sides for the main. We'd have one behind the goal. We'd have a drone up high. And then we'd have to come back in. We'd stitch all of those together. Pochettino would also wear, he'd be mic'd up. So then we'd sync his microphone to his tactical footage. And then he'd go through this with the players. And it was very minute detail. So it was a lot of mannequin work, and it was, you should be 1 yard here, 1 yard there. A lot about his pressing triggers and setting traps for the opposition.
I think it's fascinating because a lot of the things that you describe in here as well, it makes me think that there's probably in a football club now, there's more jobs than there ever was before. So I know myself, when I got into coaching like 15 years ago, it was hard to get into football specifically because there wasn't a huge amount of full-time jobs in the industry, if you like. But what you're describing to me now, even people, I'm guessing, like drone pilots and people who are working on the media side of things. But if you went back to when you were sort of the age that these young people are, 16, 17, did you know at that point that you wanted to work in analysis, or was your mind open?
I didn't have a clue that a job in analysis existed, to be honest. So when I was 16, 17, I was actually just going to college and university to go into teaching. And even like my third year, final year dissertation at university was about teaching. It was whether primary school should have specialist PE teachers as opposed to just the classroom teachers like they do in secondary school. And this is one thing, when I went for my interview at Tottenham, they asked about my dissertation, and I said it's about teaching because I didn't know that this field existed. And that's something that you find maybe a little bit less now because it's becoming more mainstream, but certainly over the last few years, people just don't know it's a field that you can get into.
What did you actually do then, Joe, at university?
So I've done a bachelor's degree in sport science, sport coaching, sorry.
And then was there something in particular? I know when we were chatting a couple of days back, you'd mentioned there was like some sort of internships that you'd applied for. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so when you go to university, obviously you end up with quite a lot of spare time. So in the first year, as soon as I went to university, I just got a job at Next part-time. And then in my so at the end of the first year, going into the second year, there was an opportunity at Newcastle United to go in and do some data analysis on an internship. I applied for that role, interviewed for it, but was knocked back because I had no experience apart from coaching a Sunday league team. I had no analysis experience at all. And they referred me to a Prozone course, which Prozone were essentially like, if anyone knows Opta stats and things like that, they provided a lot of the data to Premier League clubs a few years ago, not so much now. But I went away, done that Pro Zone course, and then at the end of the second year, the opportunity was there again, but slightly different. Rather than data entry, it was a performance analysis internship at Newcastle. I applied, and because I'd initially applied, went away, gained some experience and came back, I got that opportunity for the third year. And basically what that entailed was helping out the academy mainly in filming academy matches on a Sunday, filming training during the week, and then helping out the first team with match days. So just filming the wide angle for the first team, and then going in and just helping them do some data entry the day after games. And that was open hours. So it was just when you feel like coming in, if you got some free time, you can come in. There'll always be something to help out with. And from there, that just...
Sorry, Joe. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, yeah.
On that, I mean, you've touched on something there, like an open door policy. So you could sort of go in and do as much volunteering as you wanted. How did you actually do that then? Did you take them up on that, and were you just there all the time?
As much as I could be, yeah. I mean, because it was completely voluntary, it was one of them, you didn't know how it was going to play out or whether there was anything at the end of the road as such. So, and with it being my third year, I was doing my dissertation, working part-time still at Next, and then just any free hours that I had, I was just going and filming things, or like you said, just doing what is quite laborious tasks, just filling in Excel sheets or something, but it actually gets your name out there and gets them to recognise that you're interested in doing it.
Brilliant. And you know, there will be students here. We talk at LLS about a winning formula, which has got three parts. It's qualifications, it's the work experience, obviously both parts you've just spoken about there, and then also it's building your professional network, building relationships with people. So for anyone who's potentially considering, you know, listening to your talk now, who likes the idea of going into analysis in the future, what tips would you give them?
Yeah, so I think the last thing that you built on is that you spoke about is massive as well, the professional relationships. Because what you'll find in football is it's just such a close-knit network. Like you say, if there's only 2 to 3 analysts that do match days in the Premier League, that means you're only talking about 40 different analysts a season. So you end up knowing everybody from every club. And then when people move on to different careers, or if people move from team to team, you end up just finding about those opportunities through people. And if you've got them, LinkedIn is massive for football as well, if people have those accounts. On there is where people constantly are looking for university interns or people just coming fresh out of university, any jobs that open up. And once you've sort of got a few connections in that field, you find that it grows because, like you say, everyone's connected to each other.
Brilliant. And you touched on something there about like people moving from job to job.
Mm-hmm.
But would it be right in saying like the skills of an analyst, they're not restricted to football or sport? So would it be right in saying that someone might start off in the sports analysis industry, but use the skills and transfer into other sectors? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, massively. And I'm still quite early in my career myself. I'm only 4 years in now as full-time. And even in that time, I've seen so many people switch to different careers. So somebody I worked with at Tottenham moved, and he now works at William Hill as a betting analyst. Somebody has moved away and works with E.ON, the energy provider, to work as an analyst in their market. And you also get people just going in as like business analysts. A close friend of mine from Tottenham as well, he's moved across to Ireland, and he's now an analyst just at like a local firm over there. So you see, as soon as you've got those sort of, it's not just sport specific skills, because you learn how to deal with numbers or deal with large data sets. That's one side of the job that you can just take away and use it in different jobs.
If we were to say then, just this is going to be my final question, then I'm going to bring Jacob in. But if we were to say, drill it down to maybe 3 key skills that you think all analysts have, what would be the top 3 skills that you'd need?
I think good time management's the big one. So one main thing from analysis is you'll find sometimes you're up, even in this off-season part, sometimes I'm up until 2 o'clock in the morning finishing a task just because of how much there is to do. So time management and dedication's probably the biggest thing. Data, any sort of good mathematics skills or data entry, data management is another big thing. And then for analysis in sport in particular, I think just if you've got a good passion for it, I think you'll get far. One thing for me is when I'm doing it, it doesn't feel like I'm working when I'm up late doing it, because you are essentially just watching football.
Sounds like a good job if you can get it, Joe. Brilliant. So what I'm going to do now, I'd like to say thanks very much for answering my questions. Obviously, I'm really keen to just welcome Jacob into the chat. So, yeah. Jacob, are you with us? You want to unmute your mic?
Yeah.
There we go.
Hi, man. All right.
Yeah, fire away.
Hi, you all right?
Hi, Joe. Nice one for coming on. Just got a few questions here because I'm aspiring to be in the sports industry, as you are as well.
Yeah.
So would you recommend someone like me, I'm in my first year of LLS, got another year to go to university to get involved in the elite game?
Yeah, so what sides were you wanting to do journalism, sorry, did you say?
Yeah, I have an interest in it.
Yeah.
But also what you're doing and like in the elite game with first team or academies, I'd like to get involved in that as well. So would you recommend me going to university to get that next step?
Yeah, definitely. Even after my bachelor's degree, I'd done a master's degree as well whilst working at Tottenham. So I'd done that down at Chichester, and that was a master's in performance analysis because at that point I knew that was the specific career path that I wanted to go down. I think what you get from university more than, if I'm being honest with you, more than what you'll learn from university is the connections and the experience that you can gain from it. I think it's invaluable because I think so that was how we got into Newcastle United in the first place. One of the lecturers at university had a connection at Newcastle. He knew about the job opening and he told it to us as students. And I think that's where it all starts, really.
Yeah, thanks for that. So how do you measure success in your department? So do you look back on games and thought, we analysed that and we shut that down? Do you look back on that after games, or like how do you measure success in your position?
Yeah, so it's quite a tough one actually because of how demanding the schedule is. You end up just going, and we say it between us in our office sometimes. Sometimes you go 3-4 weeks where you're just churning out game after game after game, and you don't even look back. And then suddenly you look, especially over the Christmas period, you look back and you think we've just played 8 or 9 games there on the spin. So what we end up doing is sort of analysing things either in international breaks or this season where we've just had a winter break and then at the end of the season. And one thing that we've done at Tottenham, which was really good to be fair, which came from the assistant manager, they asked us to go back through all of our pre-match work against each club, pinpoint what we'd said we should have done, and then whether we actually done that in the game and then whether it worked or not, and then sort of come away with a success rating for whether it was working or not and what we should then shape or change for the next season.
Hey, thanks for that. That's very insightful what you're saying as well. So where do you see yourself in 5-10 years' time? Do you have any ambition to get involved in maybe the England setup, or do you want to stay in top Premier League clubs?
For me, again, once you're in this sort of field, I don't think there is any limitations. So seeing numerous people go from analysis into coaching, and that's something on a personal level that I'm quite interested in. So my next step is to go away and do my UEFA B at some point. And when you work so closely with the coaching staff, it's something that you can actually get involved in and go down that side of things. In terms of the England setup, it is something that I'd be interested in doing at some point. I don't have any sort of immediate plans, as in I need to be here or there. There's no specific club that I would want to go at, sort of thing. It's just every season you
Just on a
get a
personal
new
level,
challenge.
just
Sorry,
on
yeah.
a personal level, say your local club or the team you support, do you have any ambitions to work with them, or?
Yeah, so I'm a Newcastle fan, but it's quite a tough one, really. There is a part of me that would, love to go to Newcastle, work closely with the first team and help them win a trophy. But then there's also a part of me that, would it take the enjoyment out a touch if maybe you went there, you weren't successful in both the club you support and the club you work at? It's an interesting one, but it's something I'm not really fixated on doing that.
Understand. Just one last question. When you're analysing games, what in particular are you looking for? Are you looking for, do they attack more down the left side? What players did they use more? Strengths and weaknesses of players? What's the main thing you're looking for when you're analysing players or the opposition?
It's sort of a combination of the lot, to be honest. Like I said before, we split the pitch into thirds, and then we go through those thirds with the players. So our pre-match video ends up being what they do and then what we can do. If they've got a specific player or a specific routine, we will highlight that. So, for example, with Chelsea a couple of seasons ago, theirs was all around Jorginho. He would end up getting 100 plus passes a game, but they were all 3-4 yard passes. So then it becomes, if we can shut him down, you stop Chelsea playing effectively. Whereas some clubs, it's different. So when you face Burnley, for example, Burnley are what they are. They're going to go long. They're going to try and hit the two strikers. They're going to put plenty of crosses into the box. And it ends up being, there's nothing fancy you can say about it, really. It becomes, you say to the players, it's going to be a fight. And that's it, really.
Do you ever get asked or go to any games? So sometimes you see managers say Liverpool are playing Everton next week. Klopp goes to the previous Everton game. Do you ever get the chance to do that, or do you just watch on the telly?
No, so each club does it differently. So at Tottenham, we would go to the game one before they were going to play us. An analyst would go and watch that game. But that was because we had the resources to be able to do that, to have members of staff in the office and to have one go to games. At Aston Villa, we do things differently. So we have us as opposition analysts, we do it all via video, but then we have opposition scouts, which are a couple of ex-managers, and they're sort of like the older generation. They go to the games, they do a pre-match report for us, and then we sort of link that with what we've done.
Brilliant. Right, I'm just going to come in. I'm really conscious of your time. Joe, Jacob, can I just say that those questions have been absolutely brilliant. So thanks a lot for really good preparation there. Well done. Just before we run out
thanks for getting me on as well.
Say that again, sorry, Jacob.
Thanks for letting me on as well. It's been great speaking to you, Joe, as well.
Thank you, Jacob.
Your league game.
Right then, so we've got a few minutes to go, so I think it'd be good to just open up the room to any questions. So we've got two ways we can do this. We can either drop a question into the group chat if you'd like to do it that way, or alternatively, if you just put a thumbs up emoji on your screen, I'll obviously work through the room one question at a time. So off you go. I'll give you a few seconds. Put a thumbs up if you've got a question, or post it in the chat. Okay, so first questions come in from your good mate Josh, and the first question is: who's the hardest working footballer you have come across in the game?
I would say Harry Kane. The guy's relentless, to be fair. He's had several injuries even during the time that I was there, and each one I think was widely reported in the media as Kane's going to be out for 3 months, 4 months, X amount. He'd come in the next day and he'd be like, I'll be back in 4 weeks. And that's just the way he was. He's a machine.
Quality. So that's a good question to get us started. Next one, I don't know whether you'd want to answer this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What was the most demanding job, would you say, is it Villa or when you were at Spurs?
To be honest, they're both the same. You end up working the same sort of hours at both jobs.
Okay, good stuff. Next one's from a big Man City fan. And the question is, have you ever done any analysis on Manchester City? And what were your key findings?
Yeah, that's a good question, to be fair. We obviously played them in the Carabao Cup final just before the coronavirus break. Them and Liverpool, to be fair. So in pre-season, when we were over in America, we had a lot of new signings this summer, so going up to the Premier League. And one of the main things that JT and Dean Smith said to the players was, in this division, the only two teams that we can't be as good at as are Man City and Liverpool. We don't, every game that we go into, we don't fear playing anyone. But City and Liverpool are just sort of punching at a different weight class to everyone. And we look at them as two different ways. So we see City is the best team on the ball and Liverpool is the best team off the ball. And that's sort of what we set our standards to climb towards as a team. Manchester City, are incredible. And the one thing, what was an interesting insight from Pep himself, at an event we had, he said he doesn't do any work with his team in the final third. So all of his training is the first 2/3 of the pitch is all about build-up. And then in the final third, he just trusts their brilliance, which is crazy. It's something I've never seen. I've never seen a team just disregards the attacking third before. But
amazing. Next question is coming in from Andy, who's a senior tutor over in North Wales, and he's asking this question on behalf of one of his students. Mm-hmm. So one of his female learners has said she's really interested in working in sports analysis. So what's the best advice you could give her at this stage?
What year is she in college?
Sorry, yeah. So I should have probably said this at the start. So all of the students who are joining us this morning are currently doing the BTEC Level 3 extended diploma. Year 12, year 13, or they're in year 11 and joining us this coming September.
I think the biggest thing for me is to actually start building a bit of a network and to start building your own portfolio. Any sort of work you can get in sport, any volunteering you can get in sport, just to start growing that CV. Honestly, it doesn't even matter if it's a Sunday League team. If you can get some sort of badge on your CV and say, I've done 6 weeks work as a coach here, it's a start. And then in terms of getting more specific into analysis, I think if I try and type into here, if you use that website that I've just put in, the videoanalyst.com, in there, there's a job section, and that's where you find quite a lot of the internships come up. Unfortunately, with this coronavirus thing, I'm not sure when they'll come up, but usually it's April, May time. Clubs start to look for interns for the new season.
Just thinking there, Joe, as you're talking as well, because of the nature of an analyst and some of those internships, would it be right to say that you could potentially, let's say, as an example, an internship becomes available in Birmingham, you haven't necessarily got to be in Birmingham to be a video analyst?
That's a tough one. So most clubs would want you to be in the office. So all of everything I've known is because you end up working so closely with the coaching team and with the players, you are office based. So that maybe it would have to be sort of a travel thing. So whenever I've went somewhere, so when I went to Tottenham and Villa, I've had to move to both places.
Got you. All right, good stuff. So there's a few really good questions coming in from students here. Next one's from Kai McDowell, and he sort of, his question links to like individual players now. So he says, do you look at player tendencies when you're doing your analysis? So for example, if you're looking at wingers, do you look at the details like what's their preference when crossing from wide areas?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. one just off the top of my head that I can think about, if anyone's really seen Andros Townsend play much, all he'll look to do is a left-footed player that plays out on the right wing. So he'll look to cut in onto his left foot and take shots from distance on his left foot. And that's something, obviously, because surprisingly, a lot of Premier League players don't actually watch football in the spare time. So when you actually come into match days, especially some of the foreign players, if they're just coming across to the league, don't know the opponents that they're coming up against. So you might have to tell your left back, he's going to cut inside, he's going to shoot from distance, even if it's something that everyone might think, surely they'll know about it. Sometimes they don't.
Fascinating. Next one's from Tyler Hurst up in Leeds, and we've got, what inspired you initially to be in this job? Was it through personal experience, or did you just come across the opportunity? So I know you touched on that earlier, but could you just add a little bit more to that for us?
Yeah, well, it was sort of a little bit of luck, I'd suppose, as in the opportunity came up. I didn't know what it was at first, initially with Newcastle and then with Tottenham. But what inspired me to stay in it was what you actually get from it. So the working week can be long. You sometimes especially if you've got 2 games a week, you're in all 7 days and you're working 8 till 5, 8 till 6. But then when you win a game at the weekend, or you win a cup game, or you go through to a cup final, etc., there's no better feeling. Nothing really compares with it.
Brilliant. Next question. We've just got a few more to go, and then we'll start to wrap up. This one's from Danny Williams, and he's put, who's the hardest team to analyse and why?
The hardest teams to analyse, it's quite a difficult question, actually, because each team is different. So I wouldn't say really there's a hardest team to analyse, but maybe some teams' patterns are quite difficult to pick out. Especially, I'd actually say the hardest teams are ones with new managers, because there's nothing worse than if a manager's come in. So when we played Watford, for example, over Christmas time, they just changed their manager. So we had two games of their new manager, 2 games of the caretaker manager, and 2 games of their previous manager that we were looking through. And then you've got to try and put together a sort of video on their last 6 games where they've had 3 different coaching teams. And you're sort of coming away thinking, right, well, we can only look at their last 2, but then their last 2 were against Liverpool and Man United, and you think they play nothing like how we play. And suddenly, it's difficult to make it relevant to your team.
Yeah, brilliant insight. And then the next one is from Danny Bell. So Danny Bell's our football lead based over in Flintshire. So he oversees any LLS students who are also doing a football scholarship alongside the studies. And he said it's interesting how you're linking analysis to coaching badges. And would you recommend that any of the young aspiring coaches should develop their knowledge by completing different coaching or different analysis qualifications? So if there's anyone who's into coaching, wants to come back with analysis, what sort of qualifications can they look at?
So you end up getting just like Prozone and like Opta. Then the FA actually have some now. So the FA have their talent identification courses, and I think they are doing, or if it's already not being rolled out, a performance analysis like level 1. Any of those opportunities, it'll be good. Just because a bit like this, you'll at least get an insight into what those things entail, and especially if you're wanting to go into coaching these days, no matter at what level it is in a football club, there'll be an analyst at that level. And I think you're getting now the younger generation of coaches, so those that have played with analysts, working with the coaching teams, they now come in as coaches and they expect analysis to be there. It sort of just goes hand in hand now.
Brilliant. Joe, that's been really, really insightful today. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to you, and I hope that's been really worthwhile for the students, which I'm sure it has. And hopefully, when we're all back to college, if you like, whether that's before summer or just after summer, when we have our next sit-downs with students and we're mapping out the future, hopefully there's more students in the room who are saying that they want to pursue the analysis pathway, thanks to your inspiring insight. But is there anywhere, obviously you've just shared a great website link there for the students to check out for job opportunities. Is there anywhere whereby students can maybe follow your progress and keep in touch with you for tips and advice along the way?
Yeah, sure. I've got a LinkedIn profile myself. It should just be Joseph Ure. I'll try and check it now on my phone for the exact profile, see if I can put it into the comments.
So I'm guessing as you're doing that then, Joe, that's something
Yeah.
you definitely encourage students to do, obviously set up a LinkedIn profile.
There we go. Yeah, that's the one.
Quality. Well, look, Joe, it's been great having you online. We have come to the end of the 45 minutes. So again, on behalf of LLS, I'd like to say a big thank you for joining us. And hopefully, Joe, we can continue to track your career journey and maybe catch up again soon.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mark.